will be given the opportunity to ask their question. In asking your questions, you are kindly asked to give your name and the agency that you represent, just in case we have to give you follow-up information. Additionally, in asking questions, you are kindly asked to please ask questions, no editorials. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming to the podium the Honorable Premier of Nevis, Mark A.G. Brantley.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press. I'm delighted to be here for another edition of this monthly press conference. I want to start, as I often do, by extending some congratulations to Miss Jamela Princess Brown of Maynard's Ground, Gingerland. She has won the Creative Seafood Competition held on the 2nd of May as part of the annual Jessup's Seafood Fiesta. She was also last year's winner, so this is 2 in a row. Congratulations to Ms. Brown. Congratulations to Mr. Fletcher St. Jean. He was recently appointed as Managing Director of the First National Bank of St. Lucia. And we always are happy to see, of course, our Nevisians do well. Congrats to Nevision Mr. Shervin Green. He is the Associate Head Track and Field Coach at Monroe College, and he has been named in the 2022 Atlantic Region Assistant Coach of the Year. Congratulations to Maud Cross Preparatory School. They're celebrating their 45th anniversary, and we know that that school is a school that has done remarkable things here on the island of Nevis. Congratulations to Malachi Lestrade of the Maud Cross Preparatory School for being a judge, the winner of the OECS Virtual Science Fair Competition 2021 on Nevis. Malachi submitted a plant conservation project using pepper seeds from his mother's kitchen to raise seedlings in a used egg carton. He copped the winning prize of a Samsung tablet. So excellent, Malachi. We might have another Einstein in the making here. Second place went to Kalia Powell of the Ivor Walters Primary School, my alma mater. And third place went to Shakayla Paris of the Charlestown Primary School. The award ceremony was held on May 28th at the Ministry of Education. Congratulations to a Brown Hill youngster, Mr. Colin Keswin Archibald. Yesterday, he would have made his maiden first-class century while playing for the Leeward Islands Hurricanes in the Cricket West Indies Regional First-Class Championships. I'm sure that throughout I'll have more congratulations because there's a lot of good news that has happened since I was last here with you, the members of the press. The Ministry of Education wishes to thank all the principals and staff of the primary schools on the island in contributing to what was a hugely successful Gulf Insurance Inter-Primary Schools Championship. Congratulations to all the schools and special commendation to the Charlestown Primary School for winning yet again the overall competition in Zone A, with the St. Thomas's Primary School taking the run-up spot. Special commendation also to the Elizabeth Pemberton Primary School for winning Zone B and for the Maud Cross Preparatory School for taking the runner-up position. The ministry would also wish to thank their partners, the Ministry of Sports, and even more directly, Jamia Claxton and Raymond Smith, along with all other staff members of the Department of Sports. The title Gulf Insurance Company Limited must be commended for their support. For 38 years, the title sponsor Gulf Insurance has been part of the Interprimary. Their local agents, A.L. Evelyn, have been a strong lifeline for our mini Olympics, and they too must be thanked and saluted. Our coaches, they certainly have to be praised for the excellent job they did, in part because they gave up their Easter vacation in order to ensure that the children and the athletes were ready for this competition. I believe those who attended the Gulf Interprimary competition, athletic competition at the Mondo track, would have been pleased. It really was a competition that attracted a large audience, a competition that was keenly contested, and it was good to be back and to see our people back after, of course, the long winter of COVID. The Ministry of Education, in a show of support to our coaches, actually funded an ATV tour for them, and I'm told that they enjoyed that immensely, and so we commend them. But the commendation don't stop there because, of course, 4 Nevis teams went down to St. Kitts for the first ever Rams Inter-Primary Relay. And the Charlestown Primary School again emerged victorious and, in fact, won easily as the champion school. So Charleston Primary is not only champions in Nevis, but champions in the Federation. Interestingly, there were 4 schools from Nevis that participated in that Rams into Primary relay, and there were 4 of 20 schools that participated in that competition. And the 4 schools in Nevis all placed in the top 10. The Gingerland Primary, with only 8 athletes, came 4th. The St. Thomas's Primary came 6th, and the Ivor Walters Primary came 8th. And so we salute the students who went and represented Nevis and represented well. We had planned a fun day for the youngsters to show our appreciation, and that ought to have happened yesterday. Unfortunately, due to the inclement weather, we were not able to proceed, but I assure them that they will have their fun at the Malcolm Guichard Park. That was the intention yesterday, and we will reschedule that event for them. Let me switch to some updates in agriculture. During the month of May, the Ministry of Agriculture is celebrating the 10th anniversary of Agriculture Awareness Month. There will be a host of activities, including an awards dinner at the Malcolm Guichard Recreational Park. On Tuesday, 31st May, and this is important, on Tuesday, 31st May, we're inviting as many people as can make it to come to the Indian Castle Fruit Orchard for a day tour of the farm. The reason why I say that's important is because we're very proud of that particular project, where we have transformed some 35 acres at Indian Castle into a fruit orchard, where we have planted a variety of fruit crops, and we're urging our citizens, our residents, our visitors to go on Tuesday the 31st of May and see what we're doing there at Indian Castle. So they're having an open day, and we're inviting you to go and be a part of it. Now to a bit more somber news. June 1st is the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season. While the Nevis Disaster Management Department is doing all it can to ensure that we mitigate major damage on the island, there is a call that we continue to make to our residents to be mindful and begin putting plans in place in the event of an impact. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is forecasting an above normal hurricane season in the Atlantic, with up to 21 named storms this year. 10 storms could become hurricanes, the agency said, and 3 to 6 storms may reach Category 3, 4, or 5. 2022 may also become the 7th consecutive above-average hurricane season. The increased activity anticipated this hurricane season is attributed to several climate factors, including warmer than average sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea, weaker tropical Atlantic trade winds, and an enhanced West African monsoon. I say all that to say that the hurricane season comes every year. It behooves us to prepare ourselves and be ready, and not wait until we hear a hurricane is coming, but start our preparations now. Let me switch to the Nevis Water Department. I'm happy to report that remedial works by the Water Department to relocate pipes at Zetlands, the site of the new Aqua Store water tank, that is now completed. Lefco Equipment and Services was a successful bidder for this project. A contract has been signed, and we anticipate that the actual works to install that tank will start shortly. Public Works is also being facilitated by the Nevis Water Department in relocating service pipes where road rehabilitation is being undertaken in Church Ground. In addition, works have started in Bart Village and that road rehabilitation project there by the Nevis Water Department in terms of upgrading and installing new pipelines in Bart Village. Even though the supply of water in the south and in Charleston area has been holding up during this extended dry and hot period, the Water Department has already begun to feel the water supply pressure, especially in the northern section of the island. They have seen low levels in the water tanks at Maddens, Camps, and Spring Hill. Consequently, the Water Department was forced to implement some water supply management measures on the island of Nevis, which involved shutting down the water system to customers in certain areas at certain times of the day, mostly at night. These measures call for flexibility, as the system is monitored regularly for water levels at various times during the day. We continue to appeal to the general public to be vigilant and to practice the usual water conservation measures, such as being smart in washing cars, dishes, clothes, and even taking showers. In addition, it is important to check and deal with leaks at home, especially in toilets, in an efficient way. The NIA will continue to look, as we have been looking, at alternative sources of water as we seek to develop the water here on the island and to produce more water. I believe that members of the press would know that we have spent a considerable sum of money in upgrading our distribution and storage network for water. And that has led to many, many years of reduced difficulty where water is concerned. But certainly we all live here. We know we're going through a prolonged dry spell at the moment, and that has had an impact. And so we ask our people to be patient. We will continue to do the very best that we can to ensure that you have adequate supplies of water in your homes. The Butler's Road Rehabilitation Project is continuing, and over the past month, works on the Butler's Road has been focused on a section of the main village road from the Domino College to the range. 2 pipe culverts and concrete U-drains have been installed, and up to the time of reporting today, the section of road from the Domino College to the range has been excavated, graded, and concrete curbs and driveways have been installed. Final grading and finishing will now soon follow. The Bath Road project, the other major project that we are undertaking, that continues. There are 2 property walls under construction, and the Nevis Water Department has commenced installation of water mains on the Bath project. Both departments, Public Works and Water Department, are working with a synchronized work program to execute the works. Water Department will be installing water mains from the Alberta Payne Community Center to the Bellevue Road intersection. And so we are asking again for the people of Bath, as we've asked for the people of Butlers, to be patient with us. You know, improvement sometimes requires that we have a little discomfort. But we assure you that once we are through, you will have a much improved road and a much improved water distribution network. The road that is adjacent to the Charleston Methodist Church is now completed, and we will move shortly to reconstructing the Methodist stone wall that had to be taken down to facilitate the construction of the road. We are still undertaking reconstruction of a culvert in church ground directly across from the Clark's residence, and we would hope to have that completed shortly. We have also undertaken considerable work throughout the parish of St. James. We have done resurfacing of certain key roads in Newcastle and Camps. The main road from VOJ School to Nisbet Settlement has been milled and resurfaced. The complete network of roads throughout the housing project surrounding the VOJ playfield and going all the way down to Newcastle Village has now been resurfaced. The road going towards the coast by our President of the House, Mr. Farrell Smitten, hope I don't get into trouble by calling his name, but that has also been resurfaced. And the department has milled and resurfaced the bus stop area around the D.R. Walwyn Plaza, and also resurfaced the road by the Cotton Ginnery Mall, which is across from Market Street. Very shortly, we will execute our plans to mill and resurface the Gingerland bus stop area and the Memorial Square Street. The department is still fully engaged, and for those of you members of the press, you should take a look, if you can, at the brand new netball complex, where we have deployed Public Works and, of course, our building teams to entirely revamp the netball complex. And so the building team is engaged in performing repairs and upgrades, and the paving team has applied a new asphalt layer to the 3 courts at the complex. We are, in essence, creating a new facility there at the netball complex, which is across from the Charlestown Secondary School. I also have some great news. A 2-man team from the U.S. Southern Command would have visited Nevis just yesterday to review and assist the Nevis Island Administration in selecting an appropriate site for the construction of a multi-purpose lab for the island of Nevis. It is envisaged that this lab would be constructed using grant funding from the United States government. In addition, the team would have collected pertinent information that would be used in developing the proposed architectural plans for the lab. Note that the multipurpose lab has 2 broad elements or objectives. 1, ensure items that are traded are scientifically safe, and 2, ensure that the food and water we consume in the Federation are safe. The lab that is proposed for Nevis will be concerned with ensuring that the food and water we consume in the Federation are safe. Specifically, it will address food, water and air quality, which falls under chemistry and microbiology. The lab in St. Kitts is already concerned with the first objective, which is to ensure that items that are traded are scientifically safe. So there will be a division of responsibilities once this lab is constructed. To provide some context of what the Nevis Multipurpose Lab will be doing, it will be involved in some of the following activities: testing all packaged water, bottled water, and be an occasional resource for environmental health and water department samples on Nevis when required. Test dialysis machine between patients for both chemistry and microbiology, and this is going to be very useful when we deploy our dialysis center here on Nevis. Provide indoor air quality service for mold, gases, and particulate matter. Test food and beverages for allergens, toxins. And this one is very important. We will test fish and fish products for toxins, such as ciguatera, to improve quality of intake for those consumers. And ciguatera, as I understand it, is what causes fish poisoning. And so it will be very useful if our fisher folk can now have their fish tested, and our consumers would have more confidence in eating that fish. I believe all of us are aware when the fellows catch barracuda, for example, they have all kinds of theories as to whether this barracuda is good to eat. And this will help to remove some of the mystery from it and allow us to scientifically tell our people whether the fish that they've caught is good for eating. The lab, we expect, is going to have an area dedicated to manage testing of biologicals such as COVID-19 and to store vaccines under low temperature. Let me go on record, ladies and gentlemen, to express heartfelt thanks to the United States government through the United States Southern Command for agreeing to consider funding for construction of this multipurpose lab for the island of Nevis. Let me also record my gratitude to Mr. Stuart Laplace and his team from the Bureau of Standards and the Multipurpose Lab on St. Kitts, Mr. Brian Dyer from the Nevis Disaster Management Department and his team, the Honorable Spencer Brand and his team at the Ministry of Communications, including the Project Management Unit team on Nevis, and his Permanent Secretary, Dr. Ernie Stapleton. All of them have worked hard together to bring us to this stage, and I believe it is a welcome development for the island of Nevis and shows that we are looking forward in terms of building out our developmental agenda. Culturama. Preparations continue to proceed well for the 2022 staging of Culturama. 5 contestants have been secured for the Miss Culture Queen pageant to be hosted on July 31st at the Cultural Complex. 4 contestants have been secured for the Miss Culture Swimwear and Mr. Cool contests, respectively, to be hosted on Tuesday, July 26th. All of the contestants have signed their contracts and have completed their photo and video shoots, and I'm sure will be revealed to us as we wait expectantly in short order. To date, 14 Calypsonians have registered to participate in the Senior Monarch competition, with the first tent to happen on June 26th at the David Freeman Center of Excellence. The reigning king will defend his title, and that competition is slated for Thursday, July 28th at the Cultural Complex. Meantime, a Young Voices poetry competition has been launched for Culturama 48, with the theme celebrating those who created the path for 48 years of Culturama. The competition is open to Nevisians and residents, and the age categories along with the winning prizes are 8 to 11 years, $500, 12 to 14 years, $800, and 15 to 17 years, $1,000. Entries must be submitted in video format, that's important, in video format only, and emailed to poetry@culturamanevis.com. The deadline, 4 p.m., Friday, June 17th. We will also have a media launch of Culturama 48 on Friday, June 17th at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park. And so it will be All Things Culturama celebrated in Nevis for C48 from July 21st to August 2nd. Let me switch quickly to Youth Month. Our Youth Month 2022 was celebrated in Nevis during the month of April under the theme, What's New? A Green, Clean Youth Month 22. The focus again for this year was on the environment and the need to bring more awareness to young persons on the importance of having a clean and healthy environment. We would wish to congratulate the director and staff of the Department of Youth for another successful observance of Youth Month. Let me segue, members of the press, to the important Ministry of Health. After a 2-year hiatus, the Ministry of Health and Gender Affairs was able to resume the Nevis Eye Care Program. Over the 3-weekend period, a total of 561 patients were seen. This included 34 new patients, 40 diabetic glaucoma laser procedures were performed. Dr. Hubie and his team are expected to return within the next 6 months. Dr. Crespo, a Cuban specialist, will continue clinic sessions every other Wednesday at the Eye Clinic Alexandra Hospital, and appointments can be made at the Registrar General Office, Ministry of Health. Now, we're very proud of this program, which clearly we could not have during COVID, but it has now resumed, and I want to thank again Dr. Hubie and his team, who have come year after year to provide this service, not only to those here in Nevis, but many come from our sister island of St. Kitts to benefit from free eye care at the Alexandra Hospital as part and parcel of the Nevis Eye Care Program. The Nevis Nurses Association would have celebrated their Nurses Week from 9th to the 15th May under the theme Nurses, a Voice to Lead, Invest in Nursing, and Respect Rights to Secure Global Health. Several nurses and health practitioners were publicly honored, and permit me to mention them because I think that they have served with distinction. Nurse Jacqueline Glassford served for 40 years. Jacqueline Dorr for 36 years. Bernadette Jeffers for 41 years. Carolyn Saunders, 16 years. Miriam Freeman, 16 years. Martina Quayle, 17 years. Judith Franklin, 13 years. Joya Walters served for 29 years. Ermin Jeffers served for 40 years. Patricia Fleming served for some 54 years. When I saw Miss Fleming, I asked if she started at age 6. She said she started straight out of school. She served for 54 years. And then we had some supportive awardees. Dr. Judy Nisbet, the head of our local task force for COVID here in Nevis, she would have given 41 years of service to the Ministry of Health here in Nevis. Delcia Julius, 15 years. Glenford Herbert, 37 years. And Gloria Pemberton, 12 years. I believe that I would have wanted to mention them because their service is truly worthy of commendation. In recognition of the International Day of the Boy Child on May 16th, the Gender Affairs Department chose the theme Boys Under Construction, Building Positive Attitudes in Our Boys. The day focused on raising awareness of the need to protect our boys from harmful influences and focusing on their overall well-being. Each school was asked to select a boy whom they thought fit the qualities for the Boy of Excellence Award. That boy had to be someone who showed compassion and determination, is community-oriented, and is a positive role model for his peers. And throughout the schools, they have been selecting these boys, and I would want to commend them all. The Ministry of Health and Gender Affairs, in collaboration with Bouncing Daughter Publishing, on May 19th, held a panel discussion on the topic, Lifting the Weight of Miscarriage and Infertility in Nevis. The panelists consisted of an experienced OBGYN counselor and 2 individuals who have experienced pregnancy loss. Although we understand that topics such as these are sometimes taboo, the aim of the discussion was to share information as it pertains to miscarriage and infertility, and really to break the silence in relation to these matters and help so many women who have suffered quietly and silently because of these difficulties. And so we are very happy to see this event take place as we continue to take care of the social needs of our people here on the island of Nevis. From the Ministry of Tourism, let us express thank you to all who participated and made a success of our Tourism Expo stage during the month. This was under the theme Rethinking Nevisian Tourism. And with the exception of 2020, the ministry has been celebrating Exposition Nevis since 2016, an innovation that we started when we got into government. And I believe that Exposition Nevis has really done a lot to take tourism into the community. We would have had a pottery making workshop, the Barnes Got Breadfruit Festival. We would have had an exhibition at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park entitled Nevis, Her Story, Part 1. And I invite individuals to go and have a look. It runs for the entire month of May. We had the open day at the Nevis Heritage Village, where I was able to get some hot bread and butter, turned cornmeal, steamed fish. They had a lot of delicacies there on sale at the open day at the Heritage Village. Then we had the Bart Village Community Festival at the historic Fort Charles. We also hosted an entrepreneurship workshop for small tourism businesses at the MGR Park. And this was well received by the 17 participants who participated. The Tourism Youth Congress was held at NEPAC on May 18th, and I would want to express heartiest congratulations to Miss Kalia Huggins Simmons of the Charleston Secondary School for winning the title of the Junior Minister of Tourism 2022. She will represent Nevis in the CTO Tourism Youth Congress in the Cayman Islands in September. In second place was Mr. Kijari Huggins of the Gingerland Secondary School, and in third place was Miss Lochelle Herbert of the Charleston Secondary School. We would want to commend them, but also to commend all 8 participants who presented clear and insightful tourism ideas on sustainable, experiential, and community-based tourism projects. We also would have hosted the first ever Exposition Nevis Festival at the MGR Park, which took the form of a family fun day. I am told that there was a friendly tug-of-war match between the members of staff of the Ministry of Tourism Nevis and the Ministry of Tourism St. Kitts, and Nevis emerged victorious. So kudos to those at the Ministry of Tourism in Nevis who clearly had the muscle to pull harder than their counterparts on St. Kitts. I am particularly pleased that wife of the park's patron, Mrs. Yvonne Gishard, sponsored one of the races in that event. Now, this Saturday, 28th May, we are asking one and all to join us at the New River Farmers Association as they host their open day, which runs from 8 a.m. until. So they'll have a lot of fresh produce. They will have, of course, processed products. I think go out and support the farmers. It's very important. And the New River Farmers Association are doing it again. They have said that they will have a domino competition, watermelon and bun eating competitions, bouncing castle, and other fun activities for the children. And so you're asked to go out and be a part of it. Now, the Nevis Mango and Food Festival, I believe that this is a good sign that we're truly recovering, and that will run from Friday 1st to 3rd July, featuring cooking classes, a culinary tour, mango-based dine-arounds, and the signature event, the Nevisian Chef's Mango Feast, which will now be hosted at the MGR Park. Local chefs will be asked to create their best mango-based dishes for patrons to sample. Please also save the date for the next night market to be held at the Artisan Village. It has been a very popular event, and this one will happen on Saturday, July 9th. You'll hear some more about that as we go along. For our taxi drivers out there, I hope they're listening. The ministry will shortly be revising the existing taxi rates for the island of Nevis, which have been in place since 2007. So the taxi drivers have had the same rates for the last 15 years. And we shall be revising them after having several meetings with both taxi associations on Nevis. The old rates only had 2 reference points, the Vance Amory Airport and Charlestown. The new rates, however, will have 8 reference points across the island, which will make it much easier to apply rates between any 2 points on the island of Nevis. And I'm sure the taxi drivers will say it is long overdue. We have listened, and we will shortly be sharing more information in that regard. Ladies and gentlemen, I shall leave it there and invite your questions that you may have for me as we try to get through this press conference today and hear what is on the minds of members of the press and what it is you may wish to ask me about.
Good morning, Premier Brantley.
Good morning.
Greenbart from SKN Newsline. I have several questions, but the first could you indicate what has been the NIA's experience dealing with the federal government since the exit of PAM CCM representatives from the cabinet and the dissolution of parliament? Second question, if the PAM CCM is not successful at the polls to command majority in parliament and another government is formed, is the NIA confident a better relationship could develop or will develop between Nevis and St. Kitts? And you can put that in the context also of statements that you have said before regarding the relationship under the Team Unity government. Third question, how do you respond to the Prime Minister describing PAM CCM representatives who were in cabinet as resorting to old politics and putting party interests above the people's interests? And I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Mr. Bard, thanks for your question. The Prime Minister is in election mode. Naturally, we expect him to say almost anything at this point. I think he realizes that he has no pathway back to the office of Prime Minister. He has burnt bridges with everybody. He's burnt bridges with his Labour Party. He has burnt bridges with CCM. He has burnt bridges with PAM. And if what I hear is correct, that he's trying to hold on to the NRP now in Nevis, then that is a lost cause for him. So, the difficulty he has no pathway. So I would expect that he will say and do anything at this point. The next speech that he makes, I wouldn't be surprised if he says that Bob Marley and Michael Jackson will be coming for a concert. Because that's, I believe, now what the level of desperation has come to. So I am not too concerned with comments made by the person who, in my respectful view, has really caused the collapse of Team Unity. The person who, because he and he alone must have the office of the Prime Minister, the person who, he and he alone, must have everything concentrated around him. The classic display of narcissistic behavior. And it has caused a collapse. I have said publicly, and I continue to say, that the Honorable Sean Richards, the Deputy Prime Minister, as the leader of PAM, and I as the leader of CCM, we did everything humanly possible. Everything to try and save this government. But at the end of the day, the Prime Minister had no interest in saving the government. He felt somewhere in the recesses of his mind that if he went out on his own, he could win a majority of seats and be Prime Minister for life, because that is what he wants. And so it will be up to the people to determine that. I think that our people are astute, our electorate is well educated and knowledgeable, and they have seen and they have heard, and they will make a determination at the end of the day. For my part and for the CCM, we have said, as we always do, that the voice of the people is the voice of God. And once they've made their determination, Mr. Bart, that is their determination, and we will have to abide by it. And so I have not too much interest in what the gentleman is now saying, because my view, when he had the opportunity to mend fences, the opportunity to compromise, the opportunity to treat his colleagues with some level of respect, he opted not to. And that is what has caused this demise. Now, what has our experience been with the federal government? It continues as usual. Business continues. Any interaction between ministries in Nevis and ministries in St. Kitts, that continues. And I would wish to go on record to praise our public servants because they have not allowed themselves to succumb to the political picong that they're seeing happening. And so they are professionals and they have done their job and they continue to do their job. And so that has been our experience. What if the PAM and CCM are not successful in getting back into government? Do we think that the relationship is going to get better? I put it this way. We will continue to try to build the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis and between the people of St. Kitts and the people of Nevis. We are ultimately one people. They are connected in so many ways, culturally, family ties, intermarriage, you name it. I am marvel all the time that when I go to St. Kitts and I speak to Kittitians, they always tell me, my father, my grandfather, my mother, my grandmother, somebody for them is from Nevis. There's that umbilical cord that connects us. And the people and the relationship between our people is rock solid. It has always been. The difficulties that we have continued to be political difficulties. And I am hopeful that whatever government is in Church Street, that they will understand that all the people of the country matter. Not just some, all. And I'll tell you, we have this debate now about fair share and what Nevis should get. That debate would never have become necessary if the person sitting in Church Street as the Prime Minister of the country understood that the people of Nevis were equal citizens in the Federation and that we deserve more than scraps from the table. We deserve a fair share of resources, a fair share of opportunities, and that the people of Nevis have a contribution to make to national development. And I get a little agitated when I have to speak to this because to me it is so obvious. With a population our size, we really ought to seek to harness all of the talent that we have. And I comment on it, Mr. Bart, all the time because it wasn't until I became Minister of Foreign Affairs that we had the first Nevisian serving as an ambassador in our country. What you mean to tell me that for over 30 years, nobody from Nevis was qualified? No. Nobody from Nevis was ever considered. Notwithstanding that we have people, stellar diplomatic credentials, they were never considered. And that is the difficulty that I have had. And that is what I keep preaching about. Because my view is that every little boy or girl in Nevis should grow up in a country where they can aspire to be anything that they want to be. Just like their counterparts in St. Kitts should be able to grow up in a country that they can aspire to be anything that they want to be. The days of saying to the people of Nevis that your room is in the back of the bus, those days are over. And if that message causes some discomfort to some, then I apologize to them, but that is our new reality. And so whoever sits in Church Street is going to have to deal with a Nevis now that is saying that we will not sit at the back of the bus. We will be in the bus with you, developing the country with you, partnering with you, and we are entitled to and demand the full fruits of our citizenship. Because my passport says St. Kitts and Nevis, just like yours. And I don't think that right-thinking members of our society should have a difficulty with that. And that is all we've been saying. And so whoever sits in the seat of Prime Minister after the next election has to appreciate that all of our people matter. All. Not some, but all. And when resources come, when opportunities come, all of our people should be considered. Those from St. Kitts, certainly. Those from Nevis, equally so. And so that would be my response to you. I don't engage in what-ifs where politics is concerned because we'll have to wait until the seats are tallied, the votes are counted. And I am hopeful that when the Saints go marching in, PAM and CCM will be in that number.
Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning.
If the Concerned Citizens Movement...
Your name and agency,
yes.
just for the record.
I do apologize. Shamika Bajan, Vaughan Radio. Okay. If the Concerned Citizens Movement, CCM, is successful in the upcoming elections, and PAM has not accumulated enough seats to continue the reign of Team Unity, What then will the CCM do? Will you join with the Labour Party? Is that an option? Question 2. Do you have a completion date for the Bat Road Rehabilitation Project? 3. We have had some new cases of COVID on Nevis. Could you give a report on that? And on tourism, when will we start seeing more cruise ships for 2022? That's it for me for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that the cruise season is over for 2022. I need to be careful because tourism works in mysterious ways. The season would ordinarily run from late one year into early the next year. So the 2021-2022 season is really over at this point, meaning that that would have started last year around October, November, and by now, in May, that season is done. The new season should start in about October, November this year, and then go into the following year. We do not yet have the details on that because it's too early for the agents to tell us what ships are likely to come. I can tell you, however, that our CEO of the Nevis Tourism Authority, Devon Liebert, would have traveled to a large cruise conference in Miami recently to try and drum up support and drum up attention and drum up awareness of Nevis as a destination for the smaller ships. And so we wait to see what is going to happen when the new season starts in November or thereabouts, October, November of this year. So I hope that that explains it. But I don't expect that we're going to have cruise ships in May, June, because that is outside the season. The cruise industry, I think they shift their ships to the Mediterranean and elsewhere at a particular time of year. So our time of year tends to be during the winter months in the United States and in Europe. The Bath project, I think that I was looking quickly through my papers because I think that I was told this morning that it should be 2 to 3 months on that project. Remember, we would have done the lower road in Bath, so we are now doing the main road going through Bath Village. And so that should be done in 2 to 3 months. That is the expectation. New COVID cases, you're right. Nevis has had a sudden surge in COVID cases. In fact, I believe the last numbers I saw, we had just over 40 or thereabouts active cases. This is alarming for us because we have not had any cases in quite some time, and the only cases that we did register were persons who were visitors. These are local cases, locally grown cases in the sense that they have no travel history. So we are uncertain as to where that surge might have come from, but we are aware that there was a particular event, and from that event, quite a few cases emerged. And so we had one event which accounted for the majority of those cases. So far, we have had one individual hospitalized. What I'm advised is the last update I got yesterday that he's doing well, and we are hopeful that he will make a speedy recovery. The other cases, from what I gather, are mild. And so there is, at this point, no need for alarm. What I will say, however, is that we have had the unfortunate situation where a few doctors and quite a few nurses have come down with COVID. And so that has put some pressure on us at the hospital. And I believe that the Junior Minister of Health, the Honorable Hazel Brantley, has only yesterday advised the Cabinet that they've gone back to 12-hour shifts at the hospital because of the short staff occasioned by the fact that a few have COVID. But I've been keeping tabs on it with Dr. Nisbet. I've been speaking to some of the people who have tested positive, and most of them are saying they have no symptoms. So we are hopeful that this is a spike. COVID is still out there. We continue to ask our people to be careful, to wear their masks as much as possible. And of course, we continue to encourage people to get vaccinated. It is still the best protection that we have against COVID. And we are privileged that a lot of the people that we are told tested positive, that because they were vaccinated, they have had little or no symptoms at all. Most of them only tested, I gather, because they were contact traced. And so I feel that the situation, as I speak, appears to be under control, and we are hopeful that we don't have any other spikes and that we start to record recoveries from those individuals. So that is as much as I can say on the COVID situation. You gave me a what-if scenario. What if somebody else is in office in St. Kitts, what will CCM do? And I thought I told Mr. Bart that I don't engage in speculation where politics is concerned. So let us go out and campaign, let the people vote, and then let us see who gets seats, and then we form a view thereafter. But for my current purposes, it is a futile exercise to engage in what-ifs where politics is concerned. The only way we can form a government is to have seats. It's to win seats and be at the table. And that is why we are trying our best in Nevis here to ensure that the 3 seats that we currently hold, 9, 10, and 11, that they return to the concerned citizens movement. Why? Because we have demonstrated that we are prepared to stand up for the people of Nevis. And I think it's a badge of honor for me that when my party, the CCM, was in opposition, we stood up on principle. And when we went into government, we also stood up on principle, to the point where we were prepared to walk away from the government that was not delivering what was promised to the people of Nevis. I think that sends a clear signal to whoever might be in government in Bastia in the next few weeks, that if you don't treat with Nevis in a fair way, if you don't treat with Nevis with integrity, then the people of Nevis and the leadership of Nevis will not accept it. And so that is as much as I can say at this point in time. People will have to go out and campaign and bring the message to our people. Of course, we have said that we will coalesce with the People's Action Movement in what we are saying is real unity, because we continue to say that unity has not died. The ideas behind unity, the principles of bringing our people together, unifying our people, and those principles are still alive. We have one rogue element that has left unity. PAM and CCM are still there, and we believe that we represent real unity, real progress for the people of this country.
Mr. Premier, good morning. German Abel, SKN Vibes. 2 economic questions. One, now that the Concerned Citizens Movement is no longer in the federal government, can you speak to how is this going to impact the NIA's projections and its economic outlook for the remainder of 2022? I know you would have had some leverage by being in the federal government. Second question, has Nevis received its allotment under the Citizenship by Investment Agreement, or the agreement you guys made with the federal government? And if so, did that sum include the projected increase or that the Prime Minister announced will be given to Nevis? And my third question has to do specifically with COVID-19. We're seeing the rise, you expressed concern there, but have you gotten any sense, because when we look at the overall vaccination rate in St. Kitts and Nevis, especially second doses, it seems as though there's some slowdown with regards to people coming to get their second dose, and it's going to spill over into the booster shots. Have you gotten any feedback from the general public as to why they're so reluctant still to either get the second dose, or some overall not getting their first dose?
Thank you as always, Jermaine, for the questions and for journeying over from St. Kitts to be here with us. And Mr. Bart, I should have said thank you for that as well. The COVID-19 issue about vaccines, it's a vexed issue. It's something that we have been debating now for the past almost 2 years. Vaccines first became available about over a year ago. And we have been debating this issue as to why some people are reluctant. People have formed their own view. Some have said that it's a function of their health. Some have said it's a function of their belief system. I believe that we have tried all that we can. And the reason why it has slowed down is because people now are only getting vaccinated. The irony is that a lot of people are only going now if they have to travel, for example. You know, the other day somebody said to me that they had to go to the United States. And it was a necessary trip, so they went to get their shot. But if they didn't have to go to the States, they would not be taking any shot. So there you go. So it is an interesting phenomenon. I can't say that I know why. I can only say that I continue to encourage our people to go out and get vaccinated. I've had my 2 shots, and I've been boosted. and I feel fine. In fact, the booster works like Red Bull. It gives you pep. So I feel really good. So I'm encouraging people to go out and get their vaccination. And as I said, the vaccine has demonstrated, and the empirical data suggests, that if you're vaccinated, you're less likely to get COVID. But if you do get COVID, the symptoms tend to be mild, and you're less likely to be able to transmit it. So I think there are very good reasons why the vaccines work, and the vaccines are still available here for free. And so we urge our people to go and to have that. CCM no longer in the federal government. Does that impact our economic outlook? I think not. The economy of Nevis is not dependent in that way on the politics in St. Kitts. We recognize that some projects that if somebody's in Church Street who's seeking to be vindictive, they may try to stymie or stifle. But let us be frank and realistic. We are now less than 90 days until we have a new government. So this is not and will not be an extended period. I view this as a short holiday. So the Saints will go marching in soon, and when that happens, then we can talk about what impact we can have in terms of our economy. But at present, I don't see that there's any negative fallout for the Nevis economy, save and except that wherever, of course, there's political difficulty, there are investors who get concerned about instability. I think that despite the farcical nature of what is happening now, where we have a purported cabinet made up of 3 elected members and 2 nominated members, and we have 8 elected members who are outside the government, which means that 8 constituencies in the Federation are unrepresented in cabinet. That is unprecedented, and I would argue undemocratic, and I would argue unconstitutional. But I'm told that there was a feeling in some quarters that we would rush to the court to try and resolve this. And I said to my colleagues, there's no need to rush to the court. There's another court, the Court of Public Opinion. And I don't know that the High Court and the Court of Appeal and the Privy Council will be able to address this in the 90 days that the people will have to address it. And so let's not waste time. Let's go to the people. Let's go to the Court of Public Opinion and let the people decide what it is they want. And if they're satisfied that we have a kangaroo cabinet and that is the kind of cabinet that they want, then the people will make that decision. Whatever decision they make, I am happy with. As I say, their voice is the voice of God. So our economic outlook, I don't see at this point. You asked about money coming to Nevis. I can say that Nevis is now getting some $5.5 million a month. This was in response to communication that I sent to the Prime Minister on the 18th of January 2022. He did not respond to say yea or nay, except on the 25th of January. He said that the contents of my letter have been shared with the Financial Secretary for advice on the present fiscal situation so that an appropriate response can be made. I wrote again to him on the 15th of February 2022, tell him that, we need to hear something from him because we were hitherto getting $3.75 million a month, purporting to be an interim measure. But the problem that I had is that somewhere in St. Kitts in Church Street, the word interim was interpreted as permanent. So what should have been interim while we work out the mechanisms for Nevis to get its share of the CBI proceeds, that became, it seems in the eyes of some, a permanent thing. So after in 2021, we understood the figures that CBI earned $588 million in 2021, from which the island of Nevis got the same $45 million, reflecting $3.75 million a month. I wrote to the Prime Minister in January and I said that was not good enough. And he did not respond until eventually, on the eve of the PAM convention, on March, he sent me a letter dated March 9th, delivered by hand by a police officer, which indicated that he would accede to the request to increase the amount from $3.75 million to $5.5 million, which was intended to be until June, because I indicated to him that I would not be going beyond June in relation to a final determination of this issue, because for far too long he had, I don't know if you use the language, in St. Kitts, but in Nevis we say cataflap. All it means is somebody trying to give you a 619. And for far too long, that is what he had been doing. So I finally put down a marker, and I said, I want this interim money, and I'm not prepared to go beyond June. And so he finally relented the day before the PAM convention, sent a policeman to Nevis with a letter, and then the day before we were to meet, I believe we were to meet on Holy Thursday. That is the Honorable Sean Richards, the Honorable Prime Minister, and myself. The Wednesday prior to that meeting, he sent over a check comprising the monies that had been requested since January in order to give an interim measure to the people of Nevis as we negotiate the final provisions in relation to our share of the CBI proceeds. To put it in context for the people of Nevis and for the press, if the Charleston Accord that had been signed, agreed to and signed by Timothy Harris, if that Charleston Accord had been honored, the people of Nevis would have gotten somewhere in the region of $145 million from CBI in 2021. Instead, we got 45. It means that we left $100 million on the table. And so people need to appreciate what we're talking about, because $100 million could have done wonders here on the island of Nevis in terms of our local economy, in terms of the government's ability to provide safety nets to our people, provide salary increases, provide all the things that governments are called upon to provide. We would have been in a much better place. And in fact, when one goes back to 2008 and we look at the pattern from 2008 until now, our research shows that the country has earned over $5.3 billion in CBI receipts, of which the island of Nevis has got only $400 million. And so when I hear the Nattery neighbors say, what happened to the $400 million? I say, how come nobody's asking what happened to the $5 billion that St. Kitts kept over there? How come we're not getting that debate? And you realize that every time Dr. Harris speaks, he's very eloquent and very knowledgeable about how much Nevis get. He, however, has complete amnesia when it comes to how much St. Kitts has got. Never, and I invite the press to search, Google, search your archives, has he ever, in any speech, said to the public how much money CBI has brought in and how much money St. Kitts has kept. But he waxes eloquent about how much Nevis get. And it bothers me that people in Nevis swallow that hook, line, and sinker and run with it. 400 million out of 5.3 billion is just about 7%. It means that over that period of time, 93% of the proceeds of the CBI have gone to Bastille. 93% has gone to Bastille. Nobody's asking for an accounting of that. And that is why this discussion and this debate is so important. And I will add one other thing. Because as Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have been responsible, working with the team in Foreign Affairs, to expand the diplomatic footprint of our country. I'm very proud that since 2015, when I became minister, that we added 47 countries to our list of countries with which we have diplomatic relations. And we added 32 countries that you and I can now travel to without a visa. Every country that is added to the list of countries that you can access visa-free increases the strength, the power, and the desirability and marketability of your passport. When I started out, we had countries in the region like the Bahamas and Barbados that were ahead of us. I can now say that the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis has the most powerful passport in the entire region. And that has contributed significantly to the success of the CBI program. So you would no doubt agree with me that the irony is that here is a Nevis man working hard to make the passport so desirable that the success of it has escalated. And here is a man in Church Street saying that, very sorry, you're not going to get any more out of this. In fact, in a speech I heard, somebody taped him, sent around the other day, he said, they're making the money in St. Kitts and we in Nevis only asking for the money. As if the contribution in making the passport the most powerful in the world, I'm sorry, in the Caribbean, that contribution somehow doesn't matter. So that is where we are. And so my own view on it is that whichever government is in Bastille, it will have to treat with the people of Nevis fairly. And it will have to understand that the people of Nevis demand that they get what they are rightfully entitled to.
Okay, just a quick,
Sure.
Just a quick follow-up. You said you received the Prime Minister sent a check in April. Was
Yes.
that the difference in terms of what was agreed upon, in terms of the 5.5 that we are hearing now, or was that payments from January until April?
So-
and when did the increase take effect?
Okay, so my letter to the Prime Minister at the time, 18 January 2022, right? I don't want to, it's a little long, so I won't read it into the record. But the letter of 18 January 2022, I pointed out to him the series of meetings and communications that we have had, and a series of responses that he has given to me, dating back to 2018. In fact, I wrote to him on the 5th of June 2018, the 11th of October 2018, the 21st of March 2019. Of course, COVID intervened. I then interspersed that with several meetings and discussions. And every time, he responded with a delaying tactic. Every time. So, on the 18th of January, I wrote, and I indicated this. I will read this bit. It was in the budget for fiscal year 2020 that the NIA began to receive EC 45 million annually from the CBI proceeds as an interim measure. Since then, and despite the decimation of the Nevis economy and the revenues of the NIA by COVID-19, the amount allocated to the NIA has remained $45 million. To put this in proper context, for fiscal year 2021, the federal government earned $588 million from CBI receipts. The NIA received the same $45 million, representing a mere 7.6% of the global CBI receipts for 2021. Prime Minister, I am well aware that these are sensitive and technical matters, but I believe we can both agree that fairness, justice, and equity demand that this vexed issue be resolved after some nigh 7 years of a unity administration. I therefore request the release of the report from the Financial Secretary, referenced by you since April 1st. That was All Fools Day. That should have given me an indication that there was no report that he had. But on April 1st, he wrote to me and said he had a report. I said, can you release it for internal discussion so that we can activate a formal mechanism for revenue sharing between the two islands? In the interim, this is the important part, as we face the recovery from COVID-19 together, I propose that the monthly payment to the NIA be increased to $5.5 million starting January 2022. While that interim measure is in place, we can work jointly to resolve a more permanent and lasting solution to this long-standing and perennial issue between St. Kitts and Nevis. I believe we can achieve final resolution by 30th June 2022. And then I use his own words that he wrote to me in a letter of December 3rd, 2018, and these are his words. He says, this has been a perennial issue which eluded the best efforts of the leaders before us. Should we be able to iron out this matter to the satisfaction of our citizens on Nevis and St. Kitts, it would be an historic accomplishment which history would commend. Clearly, he did not wish for history to commend that accomplishment. So this was the letter that I wrote on 18 January. He responded on January 25th, Dear Premier, I acknowledge receipt of your letter of 18 January. The contents have been shared with the Financial Secretary for advice on the present fiscal situation so that an appropriate response may be made. I then wrote again on the 15th of February. I refer to my last substantive letter to you on the matter, dated 18 January, and your holding response of 25th January. Since that, I have had no substantive response from you. I have been advised by the PS Finance in Nevis that all that has been remitted to Nevis for January 2022 is the usual sum of $3.75 million, notwithstanding our request that this sum be increased as an interim measure to 5.5 million. I continue to invite a resolution of this long outstanding issue between the federal government and the NIA and ask respectfully for your substantive response, given that this matter has been under discussion now for nearly the past 7 years. He then responded on the day before the PAM convention, March 9th, he indicated that he would pay the increase retroactive to January. He made some other suggestions that the NIA should now have to pick up that programs that are paid for, STEP, PAP, double salary, economic costs for our students overseas, pharmaceuticals. So he was suggesting that I will give you some additional money as an interim, but Nevis will now have to pay for our students overseas, etc. And of course, we did not respond to that. But on the day before our meeting on Holy Thursday, he sent a check over, which covered January to that period. And I'm advised that since then, we have been getting the 5.5 million, again, as an interim measure. We will work out the final measure with the next government.
Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning.
Okay, Hewlett Department of Information. Let me switch a little from the politics, if I could. With regard to water, I know there's been an announcement of water rationing across some parts of Nevis. Now, a former minister responsible for water would have said that between 2008 and 2013, there was no reason for water rationing because they had a well on reserve with 400 gallons of water per day.
He was responsible for water, you said?
So I'm told.
Okay.
So I'm told. So that there was no need for water rationing. So why is there water rationing now? Indicating that it's some failure of the present government. Also, with respect to the increments that I know you would have announced that a few months ago, I think, that they would resume. Persons are asking if that has started, if that has taken effect, and if allowances as well have been restored. Thanks.
Let me try and deal with the second question first, because, of course, we had asked our public servants to be patient with us during the COVID period, because our income had been decimated. And we did say that if things improve, then we would adjust accordingly. And so I believe it was in a press conference here that I would have announced that as of April 1st, being the start of the second quarter, that we would have allowed increments and allowances and all of that to resume. I confess that I have not checked with the Ministry of Finance to determine how they have operationalized it. And I know that not long after that, we would have had the increase in salaries retroactive to January. So I will ask if you give me an opportunity to come back and report more accurately, because I wouldn't want to give information that is inaccurate. I know that the Cabinet took a decision that increments would resume as of 1st April. But in terms of the implementation of it by the Ministry of Finance, I confess I can't speak to that today. And of course, that has nevertheless been overshadowed now by the retroactivity of the increase that we have given, 5% this year, 5% in January of next year, and 5% in January of the following year, which compounded works out to an overall increase of about 15.8% to the hard-working public servants in Nevis and pensioners as well. So I will respond to that and give accurate information to you and to NTV at a later stage. In relation to water, sometimes when comments are made, I wonder whether those making the comments live on Nevis, and if they do, whether they recognize that other people also live on Nevis. Because I think all of us sitting in this room know that we've had water rationing from time to time throughout that entire period. I checked, in fact, on my way here because somebody did bring a comment to my attention. I was not minded to address it because the commentator has not been known during his public life to be at ease with the truth. So I didn't want to comment on it because I don't, usually comment on everything that is being said, especially for people who are just not on good terms with the truth. So I really asked the question because I said, I don't know if somebody's going to come and ask me this morning, and you have. And I'm told that by no less a person than the minister himself, who got information from the PS in Public Works and responsibility for water, that since 2010, we have been rationing water in Nevis during the dry season. And so I don't know where the suggestion is coming from that this is somehow new. As to the suggestion that the NRP left a well in reserve, I think that is just preposterous. And I believe the press would know, because I've spoken about it as one of the signal accomplishments of this government, that there was a well drilled in Hamilton, which was a high-producing well. But the water coming from that well was not usable because it had a very high content of manganese. And it is to the credit of Spencer Brand, the minister, that he set about trying to find a solution. And we discussed it in the cabinet. And there was an investment of just about $1.25 million on a plant, a treatment plant, that was constructed, and you can go there. Don't take my word for it, go and see it for yourself. Constructed in Hamilton, that we then could treat the water from that well and make it portable, bring it up to WHO standards, and then put it into the system. So I don't know how you could say you had a well on reserve when you know the water was no good. The water was not fit for consumption. We are the ones who invested and came up with the idea to get a treatment plant that we now run that same water through to ensure that it is safe for our consumption. And so it is grossly misleading and inaccurate to say that the NRP left water in reserve when they knew that the water was not usable. We had to make it portable by the investment we made. And so I empathize, of course. Being out of water, having difficulties with water is always a difficult situation. But we recognize that we've had a prolonged period of drought at the time. Just look around the island. The island has turned brown. We are hopeful for rain, and we are hopeful that as things stabilize and as the rains come, that we'll quickly get back up to normal. But in the interim, I'm satisfied that the experts at the Water Department, the Minister, the Permanent Secretary, and all the others, that they're managing the situation as best as they can. And I would want to give the assurance to the Nevision public that we will seek to minimize any disruptions, including trying to ensure that water is only shut off at nights when persons hopefully are in bed and would have already used what water they needed to use. And if people wonder why at nights, it's to allow the reservoirs to build up. So you shut it off at nights, and then, of course, in the mornings, when it's put back on, you have the opportunity to have water in your pipes. So that is the explanation. That comment is entirely false, and I believe that we should just dismiss it and move on.
Good morning, Monique Washington, St. Kitts Nevis Observer newspaper. As it relates to salary increase that will take effect this year, next year, and 2024, there is a pending election. How can you ensure that if the CCM isn't returned to government after the next local election, that civil servants will be paid the increase in 2023 or 2024? And as Senior Minister of Finance, can you ensure that there will be money available to fund the increase in the coming years? And as it relates to the airport, I would have spoken to you before where you would have shut down rumors as it relates to the selling of the Van Zandt International Airport. You did say that the NIA is looking at a potential partnership as it relates to the airport. Can you speak on that today? And also the increase in bus fares as of May 1st. As it relates to that, who do the busmen or the president of the bus association have to speak to in order to increase fares, or do they have to speak to anyone at all to increase the fares? Thank you.
So let me start with your last question first, Monique. The practice has been for the bus drivers to speak with the government. Why? There's no requirement by law, so far as I'm aware, for them to do so. But the practice has been that they do so. Why? Because the bus drivers benefit from the government. They get, for example, I believe, things like brake pads and all that, they get those duty free. Recently, at the federal level, we would have made a decision while I was still there at the federal level to come up with an adjustment on the cost of fuel, the build-up of the price of fuel, to provide, again, some relief to the bus drivers. And so I have been surprised that the bus drivers apparently have acted unilaterally to impose an increase on the traveling public. The situation is difficult for all of us, not only for the bus drivers, but for small businesses generally and for people generally. Many people are only seeing an income stream now, and for 2 years perhaps were out of income. So we really have been asking everybody to play their part. And we're not asking, of course, our bus drivers to run their businesses at a loss, but to understand that their passengers as well have come through the pandemic just like them, and they have to experience difficulties. I propose to meet with the bus drivers to try to find out what motivated them to act unilaterally, because we as a government and as a cabinet, we were not consulted, we were not advised, we were not asked to intervene in any way, and they would have acted, as I've said, unilaterally in coming to their decision that they will increase prices. So we have to have a chat, because if the same passengers on the bus who are taxpayers are subsidizing the bus service by giving duty free and things of that nature, then there is a quid pro quo, if you will. There's an understanding that the bus drivers will try to keep fares within a manageable level. You realize I said earlier that the taxi operators are going to get an increase. It's since 2007 that they've not had an increase. They too have the same rise in fuel costs and all of that, and so we've looked. But that has been a process of discussion with the taxi drivers. And so I'm surprised that the bus drivers have apparently taken this decision without any kind of consultation with the government. And I'm hopeful that we can still get back to the table and have a discussion, understanding, of course, that we cannot deny that the bus drivers suffered during COVID badly and that they too need to make a living. But at the same time, I spoke to a single mother just 2 days ago, and she was laying out for me the cost for her and her 2 children now with the additional burden to get to and from school, to and from town, as the case may be. So it's a real cost for people, and I think that it is something that we need to look at. And so I will undertake that that discussion will happen, and hopefully I'll have a report for you the next time I come. In relation to Van Samer International Airport, I can say we are in discussions. We have not yet finalized anything, but we're in discussions with a partner, and we are thinking about doing a sort of private-public partnership project to allow us to develop that airport. There is no secret that the airport has not been functioning at an optimum level for a very long time. The optimal levels for that airport would really see several flights a day. That hasn't happened. We have tried everything that we could to get traffic there, including subsidizing flights. I believe we had Tradewind Aviation, we had Air Sunshine, we had Cape Air, we had Silver Airways, I think they're now called. They used to be called something before. Seaborne. All of these we negotiated and brought in. And all of them eventually pulled out on the same premise that Nevisians were not using the airport. And the people of Nevis prefer to take the taxi and then take the boat and go to St. Kitts and use the airport over there. And that has been the perennial problem we've had. So we've decided that we'll have another look at the airport. It is important infrastructure. We cannot allow it simply to stay there and mothball. So we'll have another look at it, and we have an investor who's willing to partner with us to put up the capital to allow us to expand the airport and to make it a more viable business entity. I will come, as I always do, when I have more information. But as I said, we are purely at a stage now of negotiation. But what I can say categorically, there is absolutely no truth that we are selling the airport. That will not happen under this government. You asked about the salary increases. We have made a commitment as a government, and I would expect whichever government comes into office will keep that commitment to our public servants. And our commitment is that there will be a 5% increase retroactive. I believe that has already been paid. And there will be a 5% on top of that in January of next year, and a further 5% on top of that in January of 2023. I expect to be the Premier to implement those increases for our hard-working public servants. But if for some reason I'm not, I expect whoever is the Premier will implement those increases. And so the reason why we did it the way we did it, 15% spread over time, is exactly to ensure that we could afford to pay our public servants those increases. The 10% retroactive that was announced suddenly by Dr. Harris, that 10% would have created a tremendous burden on the finances of the NIA at this time. And so we sat, we debated it, and we decided that we'd come up with a solution that offered a larger increase but spread it over time. So it's the same way if you have to pay $100. That might be difficult for you. But if they ask you to pay $20 per month for the next 5 months, you're probably able to handle that because of your cash flow. It's no different. That's what motivated us, and I think that our public servants have the commitment from us as a government that they will get the largest increase ever in the history of Nevis over the course of the next 2.5 years.
Okay, Hewlett again, just a quick follow-up. When you announced that increase, you also announced that there would be a waiver of duty, import duty on some items. Corned beef, pasta, sardines, tea, coffee, bacon, sausages, and breakfast meats, chicken, milk, rice, flour, fruits, and some other stuff. You said that you would be speaking with the supermarkets, the importers, to ensure that these savings were passed on to the consumers. Has that been done? Because I swear I ain't seen no difference in my food bill.
Short answer is yes, it has been done. We met with the 3 main supermarkets on Nevis, Best Buy, Rams, and Value Mart. We met with them on Tuesday with a team this Tuesday, a team comprising myself as Minister of Finance, PS of Finance Colin Doe, our Deputy Controller of Customs, Senator Carey, Mrs. Joan Brown, who's in the Ministry of Finance as well, and I believe Mrs. Mentris Atherton, who is the head of our Consumer Affairs. And it was, for me, a very sobering and difficult meeting because hearing directly from the supermarket owners what they are having to endure, I realized that we need to go back to the drawing board if we're going to come up with something that you and I and other shoppers are going to see in terms of reduction in price or stabilization of price on the supermarket shelves. Listening to them, it was very disheartening because they were telling me that despite our genuine efforts at removing duty on all of these items, they said if we removed all the duty and removed all the customs service charge, it still would not make much of a difference to the price. And the reason for that, they say, is because every single week the prices go up. They are ordering, of course, from Miami. They're bringing in their products, and they're saying every week that they order, the prices are going up. Basics, chicken. In fact, I was told that a case of eggs. Normally we can produce enough eggs here to supply our local market, but for some reason, the supply right now is lacking, so they're having to import eggs. And they said to me that apparently Nevisians prefer brown eggs, and Nevisians prefer large eggs. And so a case of large brown eggs used to be $40 US. They say that same case is now $90 US. And so they are no longer able to bring the large brown eggs, they're having to bring medium-sized eggs, which are coming in at a cheaper rate. So the problem that we're having is that world prices keep escalating. The outer world is having some problems in terms of labor shortages. The supermarket chains here telling me that they have product in containers. They can't get the containers loaded. They can't find truckers to take the containers to the port. It's a serious problem that we're having in terms of supply chain issues. And one apparently of the things is that in some of the countries elsewhere, their rescue packages have been so good, their income substitution scheme so good, that some people have decided, well, I better stay home and collect the money than go back out to work. It's easier for me to do that. And so there is a serious problem that we are facing, and it is difficult for me to stand here today as Premier and tell you that I have an answer, simply because there are so many moving parts internationally which impact what winds up on our shelves here in our supermarkets. Now, there are things that they said we can do in terms of cleaning agents, Clorox and things like that, which would provide some relief on those items. But I will be honest, Ms. Hewlett, I was more interested in food, because for me, food is an essential and people have to eat. I will use the opportunity, however, to again appeal to our local farmers to take agriculture seriously, to redouble their efforts in terms of getting food to the market, and encourage our people to continue as much as possible to buy local and support the local farmers. When we talk about food security, this is exactly what we're trying to talk about. Because if our eating, which is essential for our living, continues to be dependent on food imported from overseas, when issues outside our control happen, and that food either becomes unavailable or the price goes out of control, it means that the effect on us is difficult and can be disastrous unless we start to ensure that we have import substitution. So if you're accustomed to buying the red and the yellow and the all kind of color peppers that come from Miami, buy the local peppers. Buy the local breadfruit. Use that. Use the local banana instead of rice. Try our best to see how we can substitute and use local products, because the supermarkets themselves are telling us that they are going through a very difficult period right now, simply keeping up with the constantly changing prices. They're saying they can't even forecast to say, well, okay, this is what a pound of chicken is going to cost, because every week they order chicken, the price goes up on them. And then added to that, you have the price of shipping that also continues to escalate. And so those two factors are causing severe damage. They did make some recommendations as to what we could do, but those recommendations are painful. We'll have to look and see whether or not they're possible. Our recommendations having to do with electricity, for example. They're high consumers of electricity. Can we do something on electricity? Can we do something on water to bring some relief? Those are very difficult because, of course, our utility companies also depend on the revenue in order to run the utilities. So it's a very difficult situation, and I had thought, and the good people in the Ministry of Finance had thought, that those measures would assist. And they're saying that those measures, while good, will not move the needle very much. And so we have to go back to the drawing board.
On that same note, though, in my experience, the cost of freshly grown, produced stuff costs the same or more sometimes as in the supermarket. But I will leave that one there. With reference to you had mentioned that the government is working on establishing a pension for non-established workers. Can you give us an update on that?
On the any workers, I would leave that question for now, simply because I anticipate that we will want to have an update specifically on that in due course. As I indicated, we put together a 3-person team to look at this. We want to implement it by September 1st this year. That is our commitment to our non-established workers. And so I would want to have an update on that at a specific event dealing specifically with that particular matter. So I will punt on that for the moment and come back to it at that particular event.
Good morning, all. Today I'm here representing BHC Media. On Saturday, the CCM party launched 3 candidates for this upcoming federal elections. However, these 3 CCM candidates were previously fired from the federal government for poor performance. Question is, why should the people of Nevis re-elect 3 CCM candidates who were fired for poor performance, and what do these 3 CCM candidates hope to achieve in future that they were unable to deliver in the past 7 years? Question number 2, for 7 years, you said that the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis was the best it has ever been. As recent as December 2021, you said Prime Minister Harris delivered a fantastic budget that is fit for purpose. Question is, what happened between January 2022 to now that made you change your mind from what you previously said for 7 years? Question number 3, on the Point talk show Tuesday night, the Prime Minister said the federal government gave the NIA $21 million extra this year, increasing the annual support from $45 million to $66 million, as you requested by way of letter. Question is, after receiving $21 million extra, which the Prime Minister said is enough to pay Nevis government workers the 10% increase in salaries. Question is, why did you decide to pay only 5%, and what did you do with the other 5%? Last question, a number of young people on the island of Nevis are still unemployed and underemployed. Question is, what is your plan to deliver a fair share to all the people of Nevis? Thank you.
Mr. Hanley, thank you very much for your question. You said that 3 CCM candidates were fired for poor performance. Clearly that is a figment of your own imagination, because at no point have I heard anybody suggest that the reason for the disappointment of the 3 members from Nevis had anything to do with performance. You also said that for 7 years they have been over there not performing. And again, I like accuracy, because you will no doubt agree with me that the Honorable Alexis Jeffers and the Honorable Eric Evelyn have been in the federal government for less than 2 years. So on both accounts, I think your questions were premised on falsehood, and no doubt an effort to mislead, but an effort which I think fails on its face, because everybody, including you, understand what is happening here. We all appreciate, Mr. Hanley, that the actions taken had nothing to do with the performance of ministers. In fact, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers has in a very short space of time done so much in agriculture. I can think, for example, of the Bayford farm in St. Kitts that he breathed life into. The emphasis that he has placed on technology, even going so far as to make free shade houses available to farmers around the country, including Nevis. Being there ensuring that Nevis got a share of the resources in agriculture. I believe that Alexis Jeffers has been the best Minister of Agriculture that the country has seen in a very long time, bar none. Bar none. Eric Evelyn. I'm sure you know Eric well. You and him have had an engagement which didn't end so well for you. So you know him well. And Eric would have gone to Glasgow in Scotland. I know you spent some time in the UK. More than likely you know Glasgow well. And he bestrode the stage in Glasgow on behalf of the country at COP26 and delivered. He did so well, Mr. Hanley, that the organizers of an event in Monaco invited him to come to speak. You're not from Hanley's Road, but you're close to Hanley's Road. A young man from Hanley's Road. You talk about competence, you talk about lack of performance. Performing. Our performance has been cut short. Not because of anything that we have done in terms of not doing the job that we have been assigned, but our performance has been cut short because we dared to stand up for Nevis. That's really what has happened. We dared to say enough was enough, and we will stand up for Nevis. And unless the leadership in Sinkit was prepared to finally treat with the issues that were important to Nevis, that we will not continue. And so we wrote with 3 members of the People's Action Movement representing a majority to the Governor General, telling him we're not going any further with this captain. We want a new captain. The Governor General claims he doesn't have the authority, notwithstanding the very clear legal opinion that we shared with him from Senior Queen's Counsel in London, Sir Geoffrey Robertson. I said, okay. We filed a motion of no confidence in the Parliament. And the Speaker of the Parliament was actually preparing the notices to go out. He, of course, gave Dr. Harris fair warning that this was his plan. And I know he was prevailed upon not to bring the motion. All kind of spurious arguments were made. The motion not in order, can't bring it, so you got to do this. Because there was an attempt to buy time. And in the process of preparing the notices to go out, for the motion to be debated that following Monday, Dr. Harris rushed to the media to say Parliament dissolved. And he has revoked the appointment of 2/3 of the elected members of the cabinet. I believe that the press should be outraged. Because all really that happened here, rather than, as you put it, firing people for lack of performance, he did not wish to be the first prime minister removed by way of a motion of no confidence. Simple. What you saw was politics at work, nothing to do with performance. So, I'll move on from that. The persons have raised this red herring, say that I used to say that the relationship was the best. How does one measure a relationship? It can only be measured against what was. And if under the Douglas-led Labour NRP administration, Nevis got nothing from the CBI, and whenever a little pittance came over, they say we had to pay it back because it was a loan. In fact, Mr. Hanley, the party that you once represented, mortgaged the Van Samry Airport to the SIDF for $4 million. Mortgaged our airport. That is how bad things were under the Labour NRP administration. So naturally, Team Unity said that we will solve those problems. And yes, Nevis got some money. Nevis got some interim resources that came. And absolutely, compared to what was, it's the best that we would have seen. To my mind, that is clear to understand. But saying it is the best that we would have seen doesn't answer the fundamental question, is this what was agreed? And that is where we have had the difficulty. Because every time the people of Nevis, through their representatives, have said, we want what was agreed, an excuse was given. And so I don't see that there's any inconsistency in those two positions. because I have pointed out time and time again, and I have my bundle of correspondence where I wrote time and time again. 5th of June 2018, I became Premier in December of 2017. 11th of October 2018. 21st of March 2019. January 2022. Interspersed with meetings and discussions on this very issue. When will the promise and commitment to the people of Nevis be honored? And so after you go down that road, and you keep going on that road, they say every rope has an end, and the rope came to an end. I always liken these things to relationships. And if you're in a relationship, Mr. Hanley, with a loved one, spouse, and you go up to the altar and you say, I do, and you say you will love and cherish until death do your part, and you say it because you mean it, but then during that relationship you start to notice certain things. Your wife starts to notice certain things about you. Maybe you snore too hard at nights, but she don't run out and tell the neighbors that's the case. Try to work it out. Try to engage with you. Because people who are in any kind of relationship, they try to work things out. That is a normal thing to do. And in our case, we wrote letters, we had meetings, we had retreats at Park Hyatt. Prime ministers and all came in here to talk to us. And at the end of the day, we realized that Timothy Harris was on a path and he would not move away from that path. And that path was all about self-aggrandizement and lust for power. And after you get to that realization, in the spousal case you realize, boy, nothing you do, the wife is not going to change. Nothing you do, the husband isn't going to change. At that point, you make a decision. You know what people are going to say? I thought Mr. Hanley and his wife used to be good. Every Sunday they used to be in church. But it's normal. People are acting as if in a relationship, in any kind of relationship, that at the first hint of problems, you come out and you make a proclamation to the world. That's not how it works. And if I am to be faulted, then fault me for trying so hard to keep unity together. Because we worked hard to put it together, and I didn't want to see it collapse. You say that the federal government has given Nevis $21 million extra. I would just have read from the letters. And what has happened is that over the course of this year, if this $5.5 million were to hold, then indeed we would have had $21 million extra by December of this year. We do not in May have $21 million extra. In addition, remember I indicated that as far as we were concerned, this was an interim measure until June. Remember earlier I said that in Church Street they seem to not understand the word interim. Because if I ask that this measure be interim until June, why is it the good gentleman is saying that he increased by $21 million for the year? It tells you right away that he had no intentions of negotiating anything by June, even though he agreed to it. Because he's already telescoping that it will be $21 million for the year. When what we should have had was $10.5 million until June. And then the new arrangement, bringing into play the agreed position, should have taken effect. So this notion that we have got $21 million, that is inaccurate. All that we have received so far is an additional $1.75 million from January until May. That's what we received. So 5.5 in January, February, March, April, and May. 5 months. And I don't know on what basis any prime minister sitting down in Bastia is going to tell the people of Nevis and the NIA what they should use whatever money they have to do. I could tell him what he should do with his money. So, the suggestion that somehow, if we wanted to pay 10%, we could pay 10%. I don't have the luxury that he has of surplus after surplus from our CBI money. Billions of dollars in the bank from our CBI money. No. And so, whatever money Nevis has to be managed. And that is what we have sought to do right by our public servants, but to say that we are managing it over a period of time, which will make them better off, because they will end up with 15.8% increase over the 3 years. But we did not have the resources available to us to do what was intended. But it actually betrays the thinking, you know. Because somehow the gentleman thought that by doing what he did in the way that he did it, he would have created carnage on the resources here in Nevis. He understands that Nevis has been denied its fair share. Therefore, Nevis does not have the resources that he has. And so he can announce milk and honey, caviar and lobster. And then he say, oh, let me see now how Mark Brantley over there going to manage it. But we are a government that is sensible and that is prudent. And we have always said that we will do right by our people and we will be honest with our people. And we are not going to jump because somebody says we should jump. We are going to be honest and forthright. And I think that our public servants understand the situation. And those that have communicated with me have said to me that they appreciate that some thought went into this increase in a way that is sustainable and manageable for the NIA. If I had the money from the CBI, you hear what I said? Based on the numbers, 5.3 billion has come in from 2008. If we got our 25% of that, we would have received somewhere in the region of $1.3 billion. Since we only collect just under 400 million, Mr. Hanley, it means that we are owed nearly $1 billion. A lot of the problems we have here with debt, infrastructure, water, electricity, healthcare, you know how much $1 billion could do? We could solve those problems in Nevis and have money left in the bank. But you can't do it if your money is being denied you. If instead of that money coming, as the gentleman said in that leaked tape, every dollar I send to Nevis is $1 less for Sinkits. That's how he thinks. And rather than us holding him accountable for that, we keep coming at the NIA and saying, oh, why you do with this and why you do with that. Using the very narrative. You know, it reminds me of what they said about in the days, terrible days of slavery. They said that those slaves who worked in the house slave, got very close to the master. When the master started to cough, they coughed too, you know. And they asked the master, when the master is sick, they said, Master, we sick? We sick? Because them sick too. I see that syndrome, you know. Because you have somebody who's denying the people of Nevis what belongs to them, and you got Nevisians up here parroting the same nonsense. We sick too? When they should be saying, no, we are standing up for this island that we love. You cannot be depriving the people of Nevis of their money and then making big announcements over there and saying that we over here must do likewise. Your neighbor, Mr. Hanley, can't decide what you eat in your house. He don't understand your budget, and you don't understand his. But if your neighbor is holding money that is belonging to you, shouldn't you get that money so that you can put it to use? I don't mind having a debate in Nevis about what happens with the money that you get, because I believe the evidence is clear. You talk about 400 million come over the past 7 years, for example. By my math, that's about $57 million a year. If you work it out over 7 years. Per year, $57 million. Our wage bill alone is $8.5 million a month. Multiply that by 12 for me, Mr. Hanley. 8.5 times 12 is over $100 million a year. So if even you're getting $57 million, you realize that you ain't even cover your wage bill in Nevis, you know? And yet people are saying, where the money gone? What happened to the money? You have not even covered your wage bill. Now, imagine during the COVID pandemic when there was no income for the NIA. The tourism shut down. 4 Seasons offline. Hotels shuttered. People out of work. What were we supposed to do? And notwithstanding that CBI was performing better than ever before, Nevis was kept to the same amount. You're sitting down in a cabinet with people and they don't even say, listen, things are much better than we anticipated. Instead of the $200 and something million that we thought we would earn, we earned $588 million, more than double. Therefore, Nevis, we understand the situation. Here's a portion to assist the situation there. None of that. You have to constantly agitate in order to get what belongs to you. You and your brother own the cow. And your brother go out every day. And he milk the cow and he sell the milk. And he tell you can't get any of the money. And when you complain, he tell you, why you don't go and find a source of income for yourself? But he milking your cow belongs to both of you. I know your brother wouldn't do you that, but I just use that as an example. And that is the problem that we have. And I'm saying to the people of Nevis, it is time to stand up and be counted. Stand up and be counted and stop asking if we're sick. You can't align yourself with who is oppressing you. Stand up and be counted, and that is my view in relation to that. Young people being unemployed, I share your view, Mr. Handy. I will not resile from that. Unemployment continues to be an issue for us. I can tell you that the island is slowly recovering, but we are not yet where we were in terms of employment back in 2019. Some jobs have been lost, and some may well say lost permanently. So we'll have to generate new jobs. But we have not been stagnant nor asleep. We have been trying. I point, for example, to what we have done in terms of the movie business. I'm told to employ over 50 people on a full-time basis. I see quite a few small businesses popping up. We have encouraged businesses on St. Kitts to move and set up shop over here. That has been happening. And we see a considerable upsurge in construction as a direct result of the stimulus that the government has provided. In fact, people are telling me now in Nevis that they have difficulty sometimes finding certain skill sets in construction because people are busy. And so I am not going to resile from the fact that we need to continue to grow the economy because over 200 young people come out of school every year. So your economy has to be growing at a rate where you're generating 300 or 400 jobs a year at least to accommodate people coming out of school. And so we have work to do, but I believe that we will continue on the path that we are on. And I expect, based on some of the projects that I'm aware of, that we will, over time, get to a point where we will have to start again to import labor into Nevis. Because I believe that the prospects are quite good. And as I normally do, I don't say much until I have something in hand. And so we'll hear some more about that as we go. So I hope I've been able to cover the various points that you raised, Mr. Hanley. And we will see how it goes in the next few weeks. And whether or not the 3 persons that you say were fired for non-performance can get back their jobs. Any more questions for me?
Chairman Abel again. Just 2 quick questions. One, you've been in the federal government for, quote unquote, the last 6.5, 7 years. Now that you're out and you look back over that period, what were some of the lessons that Mark Brantley and the CCM would have learned leading up to the quote unquote disappointment? And On a broad level, there's some concerns being expressed that, the Prime Minister's delaying. I know you described that. The others and St. Kitts would have described the same thing, that it's a delayed tactic, quote unquote, in terms of him calling an election date. And likewise, the same thing on Nevis. Can you say why, since 2015, and again, you guys increased the number of seats in the National Assembly, that electoral reform was not a major focus, or even if it was, it did not come up until now? And is that something that CCM, PAM, you guys are expressing confidence that you will win the impending elections, that would be a priority focus, that an election, a fixed date for elections, would be set in stone?
You said electoral reform, but a fixed date for election would have to be constitutional reform. So, just so that our language is precise, Mr. Abel, what I will say is that has to be high on the agenda. I do a weekly show on Wednesdays, and I pointed out last night that our Constitution is very difficult to amend. Very difficult. Most of the provisions require that you have a 2/3 vote in the Parliament, 2/3 in support. And some of the more highly entrenched provisions require that you also have a referendum, but not a referendum. You need a referendum on St. Kitts and a referendum on Nevis. And you need 2/3 on both. So that even if you got a 2/3 vote on St. Kitts, if it failed in Nevis or vice versa, you still can't make the amendment. So the framers of the Constitution made it incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to amend the Constitution. So it really would require the buy-in of all the political parties and the people if we are to amend our Constitution in the way that we would like to amend it.
So is the case that you guys will be getting the education process?
That is critical. That is critical if we are to get there. Things like fixed date for elections, term limits for the Prime Minister, which we talked about and which is part of the problem now because this gentleman doesn't want to be limited in terms of how long he stays in the office of the Prime Minister. Issues such as what has confronted us now. Can you recall a Prime Minister during a term? Because, let's face it, all that is happening here and the chaos and confusion we're seeing in our country is due to one thing, and one thing only. One man has decided. He now move. One man has decided, come what may, I intend to stay in the office of Prime Minister. And if it requires mashing up the country, creating chaos and confusion, if it requires forcing the country back into an election within 2 years, then that is what I will do because I want to stay as Prime Minister. Now, the opinion we got suggested that the Governor General had the authority, once satisfied that the person in the chair of Prime Minister no longer commanded the support of the elected majority, to act. Our Governor General responded, said he had no such authority. But it might be time to put into the Constitution, because let's face it, our system is not one. None of us in this room has ever voted for a Prime Minister. We vote for a candidate in a constituency. Nobody in Nevis has ever voted for a premier. You vote for a candidate in a constituency. The person who becomes premier or Prime Minister is the person who the Governor General is satisfied commands the support of his or her colleagues, a majority of them. So it therefore means that the requirement, fundamentally, to be Prime Minister is to have the support of the elected majority. And the opinion that we sought confirmed our view that there was a continuing obligation on the part of the head of state to be satisfied that this person not only had it on election, the morning after election, but continues to have it throughout the 5-year term, because that person is a representative of a constituency just like every other representative. It is the other representatives who elevate him to make him prime minister by signifying their support for him. And so the question naturally, Mr. Abel, what happens when that support is no longer there? And that, you see, is something which I think the Constitution now needs to make clear. That at any time that the Governor General is satisfied, that the person in the chair of Prime Minister no longer commands the support of the majority, he must have the ability to appoint as Prime Minister someone who does. Because that is the requirement of being Prime Minister. And so that is one of the fundamental things I feel has to change so that the country is not put through this trauma. Suppose after 6 months you appoint somebody and then they exhibit certain qualities. You say, boy, I didn't know. So I want to get rid of them. Well, you're going back to an election in 6 months? And the country goes after election after election? Imagine, if you will, the absurdity of 6 elected members going to the Governor General and saying, we no longer support Timothy Harris as Prime Minister. Governor General said, I don't have any authority to act. We file a motion of no confidence, which would have had our full support and more than likely the support of the 2 representatives from Labour. So 8 elected members in the Parliament were going to vote to remove Timothy Harris. The day before the notice was to go out, Timothy went to the same Governor General and tell him, I, who no longer have a majority support, want you to fire all of them, revoke all of them. And the Governor General said, yes, I have the power to do that. Those things can't make sense to sensible people. And if it is that the Constitution then has to be amended to make those things clear, then so be it. Because how could it make sense? That 6 elected can't get rid of 1. But 1 elected the same way like the 6 could get rid of the 6. It makes no sense. It really turns our democracy upside down. And those are the things I think that we must now delve into from our experience, our shared experience, over the course of this past 38 years now of independence, that we must change. So to my mind, these are issues which have to be front and center. The delay tactics, I think, were obvious because, let's face it, as much as Timothy Harris is huffing and puffing, he didn't have any candidates. He needed time. We have the same problem over here because we hear people being declared every day, and then they pull back. Mr. Hanley, they approached you yet in Gingerland? I heard they were looking for somebody talented like yourself. Because, you know, they're having problems. You have 2 already? Okay, okay. You know, that is the difficulty. So you're trying to buy time, and we understand that. You say, after 7 years in Bastille, Mark Brantley in the CCM, what lesson have you learned? Do not trust Timothy. That's the lesson that I learned. Next questions. Any more questions for me? Yes.
Okay, Mr. Premier, as the CCM prepares for the federal election, I know on St. Kitts there have been some complaints being passed around that there's some difficulties being experienced with the electoral office and its operations. I'm choosing my words kind of carefully. We spoke with the supervisor of elections, and his position is that he will not be making any comments or answering any allegations that have been made against his office. So, Maxine, from the CCM standpoint, dealing with the electoral office, the electoral lists, and all the other operational situations, are you all facing any difficulties with the electoral office?
As far as we are aware, the electoral office is functioning as normal on Nevis. We have not heard of anything untoward. We communicate very often with the officials in the electoral system here. We have scrutineers who pay hawkish attention to the list. And so I confess that we have not had the same level of anxiety over here, as we've heard, is happening on St. Kitts. I believe that if there is evidence of impropriety, then there are mechanisms to deal with that. And I have, in fact, urged my colleagues in PAM in St. Kitts to gather that evidence, if there is evidence, and to take the appropriate actions that are available to them. For my part, I have never had any reason to doubt the integrity of the supervisor of elections. He has supervised several elections thus far, all of which have been done in an above-board and sensible way. And it is my hope that, notwithstanding the recent efforts by Dr. Harris to change the membership of the Electoral Commission by disappointing Joseph Liebert, who, as we know, is somebody of impeccable integrity and character, and replacing him with somebody whom we don't know who that person is as yet. Well, certainly I don't know. So he has been named already. Some Grenville Brown. Coming in the context of an election that is pending, that seems a very unusual position to take. But we understand that we are in an unusual situation. My sense is that all of us have to guard our democracy, and we have to look at what is happening at the electoral office to determine if it is just allegations or if there is something, in fact, factual happening there. I saw some lines, for example, and people were making allegations about the lines. There's nothing wrong with people lining up to go and register. Question is going to be, are they properly registered? And of course, for every person registered, there's an objection process that is available by law. So, Mr. Bart, if you were to come over tomorrow and decide you're going to register in Nevis, when my scrutineers look and see Glenn Bart, they try and find out who you are. They say, well, he doesn't live in Nevis, and we object to you. You will then have to come to a hearing. There's a process. So I have not myself got caught up in that hysteria. I believe that we need to approach these things calmly and sensibly. And you know, sometimes people create a distraction over here when it's really over here they're trying to do their damage. So I am concerned not to get caught up with the distractions and to say to colleagues that if they have evidence of impropriety, then bring that evidence forward and we deal with it legally. But I have not myself seen any evidence other than what people have said about long lines and things of that nature and people getting paid. I don't even know if those allegations are true. So I think that when we're talking about the electoral system and seeking to impugn or seeking to engage, we would need to come with the evidence of impropriety. And no doubt that is why the supervisor may not wish to engage, because perhaps nothing concrete has been brought to him as yet. So we will wait and see. But I will tell you, Mr. Bart, I get the reports every day of how many transfers going to come over from St. Kitts and how many whatever. I'm not engaged in that, because at the end of the day, every person who goes onto that voters list is scrutinized by the Concerned Citizens Movement. And I suspect also by the Nevis Reformation Party. So we are fairly confident that unless somebody were to produce a list on the night before election that nobody has ever seen, that we will have an election in Nevis, let me specify in Nevis, based on persons who are properly registered. Are there any more questions for me? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It is midday. I think we've done fairly well, given the semi-contentious issues. And so I am grateful for your time, as always, and I look forward to seeing you at a period next month. Next month is June? Okay. I was about to say when I will announce my comeback as a federal minister, but based on what I'm hearing, perhaps in July, we'll make that announcement. Well, thank you all for being here. I truly appreciate it, as always. And again, thank you for those who journeyed from St. Kitts. I appreciate that. Mr. Hanley, I'm sorry they haven't come to you. You know, I was really looking forward to that, but, you know, in time to come. All right. Thank you.